Okay, this morning I'm going to do some videos on finding inverse functions. So first you just want to think about the steps, and the steps are going to be the same every time. So the first thing we're going to do in our functions always is we're going to, step one, we're going to switch the x and the y. The y becomes x and the x becomes y. Step two is that means that we'll have an equation that's x equals some complicated thing for y, and we're going to solve for y, meaning we're going to get y by itself. And then step three, the notation, once we get y by itself, we're just going to replace it. We're going to rewrite the whole equation with this proper notation, which is just whatever your original function was. If your original function was f of x, it's going to be f of x with this little -1. If your original function was g of x, it's going to be g of x with this little -1. All right, so let's give that a try. So first thing, of course, f of x is just y. So first thing is we're going to switch my x and y. So this is going to become x equal to 4/3 y plus 16/3. So all I've done is switch the x and the y. Then I want to get this y by itself. I want to isolate that. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is subtract this 16/3. I know it's a fraction, but it's just a number like anything else from both sides. This will cancel. And so that gives me x minus 16/3 equals 4/3 y. All right, I'm still trying to get y by itself. So since this is 4/3 times y, I'm going to divide both sides by 4/3. I know this looks complicated because it's a fraction, but it's really not a big deal. These are going to cancel. And so up here I have y equals x minus 16/3 over 4/3. Now, if you divide by a fraction, dividing by 4/3 is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. All right, so this is just sort of a side note. You're not going to see too many of them with fractions like this, but when you do. So what we're really doing is we're saying y equals, instead of x divided by 4/3, we're going to say x times 3/4, and then we've got 16/3 times 3/4. These will cancel, and 16 divided by 4 is just 4. So we have y equals 3/4 x minus 4. And finally, I'm going to use the proper notation. So I had f of x to start with, so I'm going to write f -1 of x equals 3/4 x minus 4. All right, so that's number one. You can try number two, which does not have any pesky fractions, so that should be a little bit easier to deal with.